This one's going to be my explanation about how psychology can be applied to this issue. I'd have to say at the outset, I'm not accredited as a psychologist. This is my amateurish take on it. It's very elementary, but I found it helpful. I might introduce this video, and this deserves a whole video of its own. That could be how it ends up. I might introduce this by including that talk that I prepared about risk assessment, where it comes down more or less to the conclusion that none of the controls, the assessments are designed for industrial settings, but they can be applied to other things. But none of the controls that are suggested are going to be much help here. The most obvious ones, humans are just not going to do. So it comes down to, on the hierarchy of controls, right at the bottom, the last one and the least effective is personal protective equipment, and I see the kind of personal protective equipment we have here, or the term that keeps coming to mind is self-help. That's what we're down to. You're going to have to do things about yourself that are going to make you more resilient and resistant. I'm not sure how this is going. I find this very difficult. I don't know how it's going to come out, and I'm going to have to. It's extremely important, this, but whether I can present it in a useful fashion, I can't guarantee at this stage. So here we go. Self-help. We're more or less here, and I've drawn a little side view of a head here. You can see I went to art school. That represents an eye, and you can see that it's facing that way. So our attention can be either outwards towards the outside world or inwards back into our own mental space. When you're in your own mental space, you can get into, I'll explain this in a moment, this is your mind. And what I've found, I haven't found this anywhere else, but it's my belief, if I can call it that any internal process will help increase your self-assurance. And to me, that's vital. I mentioned two things: self-assurance and centering are the things that are going to make you more resilient and take you off a bully's list of prospects. You've only got to get a little way up the list, and they might bypass you and tragically pick on someone else. That's another conundrum. So here I go. Look, I was about 20-something years old, 21, so studying diligently. If you'd asked me, well, now I look back, I sort of had in my mind an assumption that if I could only study enough and get enough knowledge, I could understand how everything worked. And that was brutally demonstrated to me around that time. A couple of times the sky fell in on me, and I had to realise that I didn't have a clue. There had to be more to it, and I didn't know what. This is a whole other story that's about myself that I'm not going to go into here. But as it happened, an uncle of mine who does understand these things explained this to me. He explained that your mind is a bit like an iceberg. I've drawn this here. This is represents an iceberg floating in the ocean. Icebergs are about 1/3 out of the water and 2/3 underneath. Well, it's not even that good for a human mind. Our conscious mind is only about 10% of the mind we have. This we call subconscious or unconscious. We do not normally have access to that. I've seen comments to the effect that, oh, if only we could get conscious access to that, think how much more we could achieve. Well, it's not as though that is just sitting there doing nothing. That is very, very busy coordinating all our instinctive processes and all our habitual processes. But we're not normally conscious of it. Now, so the next thing, and this rocked me, we know all about this. We know that the conscious mind, you feed information in it in the form of facts, and you use logic to contemplate things, and you eventually develop an understanding of how, material things work. But beneath that is this whole subconscious or unconscious mind. It does not run on logic. Gigantic realisation. It's informed by conditioning. What's conditioning? Conditioning is, it can be calculated by the intensity of something that happened and the number of times it happens. And you'll also hear it referred to as reinforcement. So, for example, I have to pull some things out of the air, some fictional scenarios. If you're in a car crash, that happens once, but it's highly intensive. Highly intense. So the conditioning induced in here is quite large, and it can be all the way down to the scale to the sorts of things that you will be familiar with, is that every day you suffer this low-level intimidation at school, but it happens every day. And that will create a big conditioning effect on you. And it doesn't work. It doesn't use logic to function. It uses what we call association. Your unconscious mind I liken to a big, blundering, idiotic giant. It has its uses, it's got huge responsibilities, but it's not logical. It works by association. If we take this low-level example that you're suffering, you will associate schoolwork and the school you went to and school teachers and things like this will get associated with the damage you suffered. So every time you walk past your old high school, you'll snarl. Right? At the other end, the car crash example, you see, when something of very high emotional intensity occurs, your unconscious mind takes a snapshot of everything in that scene. And because it's not logical, it can't cross things out and say, well, that can't have caused it, it couldn't have been that, and it probably wasn't that, could have been this, could have been that, could have been something else. To your unconscious mind, everything in that snapshot is suspect. So, supposing you were just driving through an intersection and someone ran a red light, crashed into you. That was the logical cause, but your unconscious mind has taken a snapshot. So, where were you? You were at an intersection. There are traffic lights. Traffic lights, bad. Could be bad. Right. It might have been raining. Perhaps that didn't contribute at all. Rain could be suspect. Your attention at that time had partly been drawn to a big transport truck coming towards you half a block away. Didn't have anything to do with causing the incident, but it's in the snapshot. Could be responsible. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to structure this for sure, but I'll probably come back to that. Or will I? I'll do this bit here and I can edit it if I decide to. So, what do I do first? I'll do this one. I can edit it later if I need to. The way this helps you, it takes care of all your instincts and habits. But all the time, if you think of something or someone suggests something to you, this gets fed down here, and your unconscious mind, you'll see it'll check through its archives and it'll check how many things it can find that relate to this, and this is going to get messy. What it does is, I'll put this over here, make it easier. What it does is it collates all this information. This happens very, very quickly, and jumbles all this together and sends back up to your consciousness a feeling. I haven't left myself enough space. Feeling. Which is a summary of everything that it found down here. Now, as you can see, because these things have been put there by conditioning, and as I tried to explain in my little examples, those things could be accurate, or they're very often mistaken. They've been misassociated, so all sorts of things could get the blame. So, if someone suggests to you, let's go for a drive across town, and I say, right, I'd prefer to go this way. It's longer, but I don't want to go the direct way. Why not? Well, I have to go through the traffic lights. Don't like traffic lights anymore. Traffic lights didn't have anything to do with it, but they're hidden down here. An aversion to traffic lights. So as soon as someone suggests, let's go for a drive, I'd prefer to go this way. I'm going to go the back streets, dodge all this. So, but you don't realise that your aversion to traffic lights had nothing to do with, you don't even remember that that's where this came from. It was the smash you had that set this in place and called, So, this worries me a lot because I see so many people these days saying, trust your gut feelings and all this sort of thing. They go so far as to claim that gut feeling is somehow spiritual. Well, we're using different definitions. They're not spiritual at all. They're just gut summaries in response to suggestions. But this becomes highly important later. So that's how that works. I didn't know. This is how we deceive ourselves. I didn't know that before it was explained to me. There's another thing that happens, and again, I'm not quite sure how the order is going to end up. When things happen to us, for better or for worse, and we can't process them at the time or any time afterwards, anything we can't process, any of this sort of stuff, any sort of conditioning that we can't process, we cram into a black bag. And what we do is we tie it shut. If you don't process it, it builds up. It becomes heavier and heavier. It takes more effort to drag around with you. It takes more and more effort to hold it shut. That's why it's not unusual for people to get to midlife and find that they're barely functioning. It's because this has become so huge. It's taking all your energy to drag it around and hold it shut. It's not surprising that psychotherapists can make a living out of helping you deal with this. Right. I don't know if there's going to be more to say about that. I'm making this up. I still don't know how to structure this, and I can't even write it down. So I'm just splattering stuff and hoping to put it together later. But I drew this up, and now that's more or less mainstream. That's elementary psychology. I'm going to go off mainstream now and go over here. And I got this out of Harold Percival's big book, 1,000-page book. He called it Thinking and Destiny. That's going to be controversial for a start. You mentioned destiny, and you can split a room full of people down the middle, because one half of them will say, oh, look, it's just fate. Things just happen to you. The other half say, oh, I'm in command of everything that happens to me. And you can't get them to reconcile it all. So anyway, this is a big complex book. And I got this out of here. It's only a relatively small part, but to me it explains such a lot. And in relation to this, I don't know, just need a pointer. Humans exist on multiple layers. We're not just one block. And Percival describes it this way, and so the two levels that I want to mention here in relation to this are the doer and the thinker. There's at least another one above, and I'm allowing for more below. I've drawn this way because the thinker, and it may be obvious, relates to this conscious part of the mind, and the doer is largely associated with this subconscious mind. This is what I mentioned before about people thinking their gut feelings are what guides them. Okay, they're living down here. What did I mean to do about that? The doer has two components, feeling and desire. The thinker has two components, reasoning and rightness. Now, it depends what stage you're at. And this is where I have to be cautious because it can backfire. Well, I know it backfires on me if I turn judgmental. You see, you may not agree with it, but I think it's unavoidable to have to allow for something like a process of reincarnation, something like that, because I can't see how you can deal with all this in one lifetime. And so I allow that we all come through all these stages as we progress. So I've got to be careful being judgmental about these. I'll probably come across as judgmental, but I know that I shouldn't be. So people progress, and people that are dominated by feeling are generally your pleasure seekers. In extreme cases, these are the ones who resort to recreational substances for artificial experiences, and they end up in the hospital emergency room with overdoses. I'm being extreme. And they're usually dead by about 30 from an overdose because they always keep adding more. These people, oh dear, these people are a threat to themselves largely. Like I've been saying, they overdose and kill themselves. Desire people, they're the ones that push themselves to the top of corporations, they push themselves to the top of governments, they push themselves to the top of sporting clubs, you name it. They live on ambition. And they just know that, these just know that feeling is right, and that's a mistake. Rightness is there. Feeling and rightness should not be heard in the same expression. Desire people just know that whatever is to my advantage is right. You get in my way, you're the one that's wrong. Right? Desire people. Oh dear. And actually these are unlikely to engage in bullying. This is probably where you find most of your bullies, actually. Just to complete this, reasoning and rightness. Reasoning is the same as logic. So here you are trying to study and understand how things work. And in the meantime, you've diminished your ability to work down here, and these people will eat you for dinner. Rightness is something else. Don't ask me too much about rightness. I'm not sure. I'm sort of groping my way gradually across here. I don't know what rightness is. I do a bit of refereeing for swimming, and it's been good for me because over the years I've gradually learnt that you have to learn to think like a magistrate. You have to be able to see both sides of every issue and weigh up the pros and cons and all that. So I imagine rightness has something to do with that, but don't ask me all about rightness. I've been here, I'm trying to get to there. The way this works in humans is feeling, the demand for sensation gets up here and overrides rightness and coerces reasoning to find the ways and means to get what they want. Here the desire people do the same thing. They don't care what's right. What's right is what's good for them. That overrides rightness, and they use reasoning to try to achieve their goals, right or wrong. Rightness is something else. I've sort of come to a stop. Yeah. But now, this is where I perceive we have a serious problem, and this gets from bad to worse. The more I do of this, the worse it appears to me, and I keep thinking, am I going to get out of here alive? Anyway, for better or worse, what has happened is we've had an inversion. You can see the relative sizes of these. If you divide these up, the sort of 1 square of those, 2 squares of those, 2 squares there, 4 squares here. So the feely people represent at least 40% of the population. That's dangerous. And actually what has happened in recent years is they have appointed themselves the authorities. This is, I didn't read this until recently. These people have labelled themselves as woke. And they just absolutely know that they know that feelings are what are right. All these are too hard. We've all been to school and they tried to teach us this and we knew, oh, it's too hard. No, that can't be right. So they've flipped this upside down and appointed themselves the authorities. Oh, I can't see this working out well. And so I've got it on the whiteboard, but not on here. So these have pushed their way up to getting jobs in bureaucracies and places like this, where they can churn out mountains of documents propagating their woke ideology. And this is where you get all your codes of conduct, and I haven't got it on here, but I was talking at another stage about, I'll probably talk a lot more about things like tolerance and inclusion and all that sort of thing. I'll have a bit to say about that shortly. So what they have done is they've basically flipped this iceberg upside down. They said this here belongs down there. Nah, we are right. Our feelings are what are right, and we're going to run the world that way. I think it might be time to pause. I've sort of run out of ideas there. If I think of something else, I'll come back. Thank goodness for editing. I nearly had that taken down when I remembered what else. So I'll pick up again. Remember, I was talking about this, how if a suggestion is made, the unconscious mind sorts through its archive, sends a feeling back up as a summary. If you go for counselling, I'm trying to avoid saying psychotherapy, it sounds too, sounds like there's something wrong with you. Counselling, they'll make use of this. Well, this is one of the things they do. They'll make a suggestion, and if instead of connecting with some fairly ordinary stuff here, it connects to something you've got in your black bag, the feeling that comes up from that He's going to inform us of something. Now they might say, what do you think or what do you feel about something? And that'll hit one of these. The feeling, the summary feeling comes back up, and as you're trying to say what you think or feel, they'll be watching for clues about, I don't know, I don't do this. I don't understand it. Well, yeah. I guess they're watching for clues. It's not so much what you say, it's how you say it. They're trying to gauge this emotional reaction. And so, you know, if you're really hung up on something here, you'll stumble over your words trying to get it out. And I say, we're, could be onto something here. Let's just take our traffic incident example here. You might end up in one of these sessions. You've had to give up your job driving something because it's all got too much for you. You can't understand why you can't drive, you know, why you can't force yourself to let you get behind the wheel anymore. I should, reinforcement. You see, it's not just because something happened once. What happens is later on, you've got this stuff stuck in here, and more stuff will get fed in, and if by association it appears to fit the same pattern, that's how you get reinforcement. That'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I gather that this is what they call a complex. So you've got a number of incidents in there. So, okay, a counsellor might say, all right, all right, there was a time earlier in your life driving was okay, is that right? Oh, yeah. Okay, can you remember when that changed? Not sure. Okay, the last time you were driving, did you have an adverse reaction to something? Did you tense up or something at some time? And it might take a while to dig down to remember, oh, yeah, that might take a while to get to this, but we might find out that, I'm okay, but I tense up if I see a transport truck coming towards me on the highway. It's okay. All right. So when did that happen? Yeah. When has that happened before? Can you remember a time before when that happened? Oh yeah. I was driving from here to there, and same sort of thing. And so what we can do is we can approach this from both ends. We can, in terms of time. Because remember, we asked before we established, okay, you were up and you were fine with driving up to a point, we can't remember when. And then we'll work backwards and we'll find these instances where driving was not fun, and you might eventually get to this memory of when this crash happened at the intersection. The transport truck didn't cause it, we know that, but it was associated. It was in that big snapshot that your unconscious mind took at the time. So this is how these things, these false associations, can ruin your life. I don't know, I get an adverse reaction every time I see anyone suggesting trust your gut feelings. They're more often wrong than they are right, unless they're talking about something else. If they have perfect access to intuition or something like this and it comes feeding in this way, okay, but more people have got more false associations buried down here than correct ones. Yeah, so that's how that tends to work. And I can roll straight on. You see, when I decide, oh no, I'll have to do something else. Oh, I meant to talk about that. Here's something else that I thought of last night that I want to talk about. And this has got to do with going back inside. So I learned about this at age 21, 22 or something like that, and didn't do much with it. But in my early 30s, some things happened, and I got thoroughly fed up, and I told life where it could go and what it could do with itself. And I brought everything to a stop and intensively started examining what was in here. And I can tell you things have got to be pretty bad before you do that, because why do people not do this? It's because the gremlins inside, the demons inside, are worse than the ones outside. In fact, there's a whole philosophic sort of idea in relation to that. I can't prove this, but it's what I'm working on, is that everything that is outside has a representation inside. And it could even be that actually it's the other way about, is that the outside world is a manifestation of what you've got in here. So following from that, if you can clear a little space in here, it'll clear out there. It'll tend to. And this is how you develop your self-assurance. The more space you can call your own in here, the better you'll feel about yourself. And the less susceptible you will be to people who can sense that you've got these susceptibilities going on. So yeah, I started doing that. I had some backup information of various sorts. Doing this for yourself, pretty difficult. You usually do it, as I indicated here, with the assistance of a counsellor to help guide you through it. But you can do it, sure. It's no fun, because I'll say the demons you encounter in here can be horrific. You only do it when you reckon there's nothing worth doing outside anymore. Another example that I've heard of that is that one branch of Buddhists have got a technique they call Vipassana meditation. And I've seen it described as being as much fun as squeezing boils. And I can relate to that. So don't think that you just go in here and feed in some ideas about clouds and rainbows and stuff like that. You know. Might help a little bit, but it won't fix anything. Won't fix anything at all. You can do exercises like, let's pull this black bag out and put it into a rocket and launch it into space and crash it into the sun. Done with. You can forget about nonsense. No, you've deceived yourself. You've put a little bit of insulation over the top of it and told yourself that's gone. It's still there, believe me, it is still there. So I did do some of that myself. It's a slow process. There's no way, I don't think there's any way, even if you go to a hypnotherapist or something like that, there's no way you would destroy yourself dealing with all this at once. Because that is, oh Jesus, you pull just one of these out, it's enough to you know, hit you for 6. So it's no use taking one of the kids to a hypnotherapist on Saturday morning or something and saying, okay, you're going to be perfectly okay by the time you get to school on Monday. No, you won't. No, you won't. Sorry. That's the downside of all this. I've thought of some things that have helped me. There are only probably a few of the possibilities that are out there, but none of them are quick. None of them are quick. All right, I'll have another go at pausing. Here we are back at this board, and I mentioned earlier the wokesters had found themselves jobs up here, and they're the ones churning out mountains of documents about codes of conduct and prohibiting everything. They're going to assert their idealism and put the world right. We're living in an experiment, and I don't like the way it's going. If that's what they do when they get out into the field, and they start preaching about tolerance and inclusion, they want to open their eyes. Because if you want to see intolerance and rejection in action, watch a bully at work. It's their primary mode of operation. This is where you need to concentrate your efforts. As I've said before, victims will tell you, you get rid of those, we'll be fine. This is where you need to do your work. But, as I've said before, it's an almost intractable problem. This is why, you don't negotiate with terrorists. They just take negotiation as weakness. And if you try punishing them, they just take punishment as an occupational hazard. They can't think why you would do that to them. They're just being nasty. So I'm hoping that could be recognised. But if the past is any predictor of the future, this is what I most commonly see. If you look at a situation from above, what people in charge tend to normally do is they identify the weakest component, lean on it, crush it out of existence, problem seems to disappear. It's called blaming the victim. And it's the first thing humans think of. They don't want to have to put their armour on and go out and deal with these. I'll see if that's got it covered. I'll see what else I think of.